Good morning, good evening, everyone. Today we have our student, Dr. Darshene Venugopal, and she's going to share some tips on her journey and what applicants should do in the coming season. So welcome, Darshene.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here.
Thank you. So let's start with your background and a bit about yourself before we dive into the questions.
Sounds good. So I'm Darshene Venugopal. I grew up in India. So I did my schooling, my medical school, all of that in Chennai, Tamil Nadu. And during my internship, I decided to pursue USMLE, and I started all the necessary steps. And that's how my journey started. There were a couple of bumps for sure. I went to a medical school which initially was not registered in the world directory of medical schools, and we had to approach our medical school to go through the whole thing, and then eventually we got to writing steps and applying. So I graduated in 2019, March of 2019, and I was pretty sure that I wanted to do my steps after I finished my internship. Around April of 2019, I started preparing for my step 1. And meanwhile, I also applied for rotations and also registered for the CS, because back in 2019, CS was still a thing and we were all doing it. And I got into rotations from the June of 2019. So obviously, the whole schedule changes. So the thing about USMLE is you change as the schedule changes. You always make a plan. You always have a plan B, but then plan C is that change to whatever happens. That's always been the whole case with also COVID. So once I got into rotations in June, then I started pushing to get a rotation for July because I wanted to get it out of my way. So then I did my rotation in June, July, and August of 2019. So the sensible thing for me to do is take CS in September of 2019. I did finish my rotations, took my CS in September 2019, took a break October, November of 19, came back to India. So in December, I started studying for step 1 again. So my dedicated was December, January, February, and March. My initial timeline was to take my step 1 end of March, which is March 2020. But that's when there was a COVID lockdown and they shut down all the prometric centers. So again, my exam was postponed to July. So it was June, April, May, and June. I just had to drag on with the entire step 3, but I think I did burnout, which is the truth. A lot of people do with step 1, and essentially addressing the fact that you are tired, you are burning out is also important, because you don't push it to a point where it's going to drop your performance. So I was very sure that the moment they opened the prometric centers, I just wanted to take my exam. The painful part was I got a date in June, and then there's a lockdown again, and it kept happening. Finally, I got to take it around July 10th. So from there, I took a break for 2 weeks after step 1, got my results, got over it, and then I started studying for my CK. So I did August, September, October, November, and December, and in January of 2021, I took my CK. So the entire idea is initially I wanted to apply to match 2020-2021, right? It did not work. So you put so much pressure on yourself for a timeline to work. But things happen, life happens. For some people, it's COVID. For some people, it's family. For some people, it's health, mental health, you never know. But I think the fact that I recognize that there are so many things in this process which are not under your control, which are so many external factors affected, makes it more doable, because you're more realistic. You don't still have the goals that you childishly have in medical school, right? Because in medical school, you have a schedule, you have an exam, you take it, you move on. So finally got around to taking CK. So I did a few things that turned around things for me for applying to the next year. So because I couldn't apply in 2020, I made sure that when I applied in 2021, my application was much better. And I did things that I would do if I had already applied for a match. So I made sure I engaged in research and also took my step 3, which I definitely do recommend. If you have the timeline, if you have the resources, if you can stay in the US for the certain amount of time, I would definitely recommend doing all of these things. And for research, I think it's contacts. You send hundreds of emails with not being disappointed when you don't get a response. I did all of those things, and I definitely started my research in March of 2021 after I finished my CK. And after that, I decided to take a break, take a vacation. So one key factor in the USMLE process is take breaks. Recognize that you need a break, take 2 to 3 weeks break. It's not going to kill you. It's actually going to help you, want you to do better. So I did take a break. I did take a vacation, and then I got back to the process. Meanwhile, when I was doing research, I recognized that my rotations in 2019 might be a little bit, the LORs are going to be a little bit older. So I at least wanted to have 2 recent LORs right before match. So I decided to do a rotation in May of 2021 and June of 2021. And the rotation in June was with my research mentor. So always, to any of the students who are pursuing research, you can always push your attending or ask them nicely if you can rotate with them. I think that makes the biggest difference, because if you're doing especially remote research, they get to see you in person, in clinic, in a clinical situation where your research mentor can write you a better letter. And that happened. And when after I finished that in June, I decided to take my step 3. So I had to return back to India before August, before my 6-month tourist visa was going to be done. So I, for some reason, just wanted to take step 3 because I had put my mind to it, saying I promised myself that I was going to do it before this application cycle. And I took my step 3 in the end of July, beginning of August, got back to India, worked on my application, submitted my application, knowing that I tried my best. So I felt that I was satisfied. I did the most I could. And that's where the beginning of the cycle was.
So I like the way, and maybe you are from Chennai and you have the CSK and Dhoni influence. You have a process, you have plan A, B, and C. Then you had the flexibility. So I like the way you had a very detailed plan about these things. So yeah, go ahead.
Thank you.
Okay, so you overcame a lot of these challenges which were not in your control, like you said, COVID and kind of possibility of a burnout, with all these lockdowns and delays. And then we got to the application, the actual application. So tell us about that phase, the application through the interview prep and how you used Sarthi resources and things like that.
Absolutely. So I think it was around May when I signed up with Sarthi. There are certain things in the USMLE process that no matter how much you research or look it up online, I feel like it's very, very vital to have a community. And I found that community with Sarthi, where you can meet people who are in like situations and similar situations. I feel like it gives you a sense of safety because you do know that there are so many students going through the same struggle or even much more bigger struggles that they overcame. You constantly talk to people in the community, or even if you don't talk, there is so much information that's being shared within the community that you get to know, that you get to understand. You can and people were very approachable when we wanted to ask questions, and I think that I was very happy that I signed up early on in May too, because you kind of ease into the idea of getting to know people, getting to know the community, and start working on your application as well. So I think it was right in May when we started having a little bit of the classes overview about the match, about what was coming. So I think that was my favorite part about Sarthi. You guys always gave us information ahead. You always gave us heads up saying that this is coming up. So be ready. This is your timeline. Look it up. That was one of my favorite parts. So attending the meetings, the videos that you guys put up really helped keep myself in track for the application cycle, and to know that if that is going to come, then you guys did also tell us that be prepared 4 weeks ahead, because you need to edit, you need to redo it, be it our personal statement, be it our CV. You guys also gave us the resources to make all of our stuff better. So right from there, we came down to the application, and I did have a mentor with USMLESarthi. We did monthly meetings. So I think we discussed the core of where things have to be started, and also about where it has to be refined. Throughout the application process and throughout the revision process, there were always people assisting, engaging, and also responding very, very like promptly. So when we did our applications in August, before the timelines, I got all my things done, my personal statement, my CV, also did keep track of my LORs, which is something that you guys did put a little bit of an emphasis on. You guys kept telling us that ask your attending for an LOR, make sure it's uploaded, make sure you guys have so many number of LORs, or you also gave advice about which LOR would be better, one over the other. This might help you in this particular program, and all of those things. Right when it came around, when applications were submitted and the waiting begins, all the anxiety is there, you're kind of waiting. That's when you guys start telling us that send in your emails, like push the programs, let them know you're there. I think that motivation when you're doing all this by yourself is very hard to find, because as human beings, we are driven by the fact that people competing with us are doing certain things which you should also take an effort to do. And I think that comes with the sense of the community and meeting people who are in the same situation. So I think that's when we started sending out emails, and you guys were constantly in touch with us, letting us know that follow up your emails, keep in track of who you've emailed, who you have not. And also one thing that I forgot about is the resource. When we were applying, we had a resource to research all the programs, which was very, very smart in the fact that we as students also engage in researching the program and contribute to it, and finally come up to the fact that there's a whole list which is updated, which it's very hard to find anything like that outside of USMLESarthi. And once the interview started coming in, you guys told us how to proceed, how to respond, any doubts. All hours of the day, there were messages on the group saying that this program sent us so many things. What are we supposed to do? Even things which were initially you guys didn't sign up for it, but it was out of your scope, but we constantly had guidance. And the other great part was the mock interviews. So even for the students who per se don't require mentorship, I think the mock interviews are really, really great, in the sense that it's not just the content that you prepare, it's also that in a virtual setup. I don't know how this year is going to be, but I think the virtual setup, being by yourself at home, you had to make sure that all the tech stuff was good. You guys even gave us a couple of meetings about the tech stuff, set it up like this, have your lighting ready, and all of those things. So I think right from the nitty-gritty details, all of those things really helped. And the mock interview certainly builds confidence, and you're more eloquent when you speak.
Right.
If you don't do the mock interviews, you're probably a great speaker, you write really well, but I feel like the interview taking skills for a residency job per se is something that you just don't acquire in a day or two. It's something that's
So,
practiced.
yeah, thank you. Now, before we get into your suggestions for the applicants,
Mhm.
just briefly about program interviews. So, in all the interviews you went, what do you think the programs look for? Yeah.
So I think one of the biggest things that I felt that they look for was if you were number one genuine. They definitely interacted with you more, and they were more engaging if they felt like you were not trying to be anything um, which is on the other end of the spectrum of what you are. Obviously, when you go to an interview, you try to be more refined, you try to present your skills in the best way possible, but at the same time they don't want someone who's trying to be fake, who's trying to be the opposite of personality that you are. I think they're all experienced people, they're all great teachers, they've seen many students over the years, and they make it out easily. So number one thing is prepare for your interviews, but be genuine. Be genuine with your answers, be genuine with your intentions of why you want to train and why you want to train there.
Mm.
And I think the second thing is they definitely look for your skills. They certainly go through your CV. Obviously we are going into a medical training, and they do look for what you have and what they can build upon. But I feel like there was one point which was emphasized in almost every interview. They always told us that as long as you're willing to work, we are ready to train you. So they're not looking for geniuses, for sure. They don't want someone who's extremely smart, who knows everything. They don't expect you to know. Actually, there are some programs which clearly told, even if you know zero medicine, if you have the willingness and the openness to learn, we'll be happy to train you. I think these are the two biggest things that the programs always look for.
Okay. Now, as we wrap up, what would be your top 3, 4 suggestions for applicants in the upcoming seasons? What should they focus on?
So I think number one, definitely focus on how you build your application.
Okay.
Um, Keep track of the things that has to be done at least 6 weeks ahead. If you have to do your PS, I understand that certain people are doing rotations. They don't want to write their PS early. You don't have to even show your PS or edit. So write just when you have time. Just dump all your thoughts into a PDF or a Word document or whatever, and you can organize it later. But when you try to write your PS in 2 days, you're just trying to squeeze so many things into a small brain space, right? You can't think of as many like life experiences. You can't think of as many ideas as to what built you to the day, to the person you are on that day, right? So I feel like being prepared and being on track with what has to happen. So the personal statement, be the CV, have it all organized, at least down on paper. You don't have to do anything great. Just know that these are the things that you're going to use for your application. And number two is the biggest thing that I saw some of the co-applicants struggle with, and also some of my juniors who've been talking to me right now struggle to understand, is about the LOR. It's about uploading the LOR. You always give your attendings heads up that this is going to be the date where it needs to be uploaded, and when it needs to be uploaded, you need to email them. You can't just expect to put it on eras and eras to send them an email and then upload the LOR. So I think this is the second one in terms of application. Other than that, I would definitely say start working on your interview skills once you think all the initial things are ready. Like you're done with your rotations, you're done with your steps. always start here and there, a little bit of personality development, a little bit of trying to just talk in the mirror 5 minutes a day, ask yourself questions, look up interview questions. It's always not what you prepare in a week that's going to help you. It's something that you prepare on the long term, which will definitely help you when you take your interviews, because at that point in time, it comes naturally and you're not forcing yourself to answer those questions. So I think these are a couple of the things that definitely kept me on track during the season.
Well, thank you very much, Darshene. This was very, very helpful, very useful tips, and I'm sure students will find it very inspiring and motivating as they prepare for the upcoming match. So good luck for your residency as well.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me today. And I was very happy talking to you and being able to help students as well.
Thank you.